Leaders are not born, they evolve. They earn respect because of their character, integrity, and credibility. Leaders are direct, clear, and concise. Abraham Lincoln was a leader. Ronald Reagan was a leader. Leaders don't dither, vacillate, get boxed into corners, or play games. They make the hard decisions. They don't pass them off on others. They understand the buck stops with them. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. What a difference a week makes. First, the president is hell-bent on a military strike in Syria, but then backs off and decides to ask Congress for permission. Then he asks Congress to delay their vote on giving him permission because John Kerry made an offhand, off-script remark which even his own State Department dismissed as rhetorical. And the latest? We reach an agreement with Russia to force Syria to give up its chemical weapons. Just like that. The Washington two-step in full swing. Russian President Vladimir Putin, now the new peacekeeper-in-chief, the go-between for the United States and the people we were about to bomb. Really? We are now going to rely on Russia to dissolve the chemical weapons dilemma in Syria? For 2 years, Mr. President, you've said Assad has to go, but you did nothing. A year ago, you drew another one of your make-believe red lines, but did nothing. Despite over 100,000 people killed, last week you suddenly announced that as commander-in-chief, you will order a military strike. The American public, understandably, is outraged. They don't want more American blood spilled. What to do? Back off the commander-in-chief thing and outsource the decision to Congress. But if Congress balks, you'll say you'll go back to being commander-in-chief and go ahead with a limited strike. Now, Mr. President, you are the leader of the free world. Do it or don't do it. Don't talk about it. It's your talking and dithering that got us into this mess in the first place. Now, I watched The West Wing. Isn't diplomacy done in secret, behind closed doors? What's with the macho man, we're going to go in and show him baloney? Every time you open your mouth, you get into trouble. Do you even think about the consequences of what you say? Don't you hash this stuff out ahead of time? Isn't that what your cabinet and advisors are for? It's amateur hour in Washington. You can't even keep the script straight between you and your Secretary of State and your own State Department. The only thing you've done is prove to the world that we're nothing to be afraid of, not to be respected, that you don't say what you mean and you don't mean what you say. Why would anyone even want to be the ally of the United States? Enter John Kerry, who tells Congress that it will be, quote, an unbelievably small strike, which of course makes no sense to me. How will an unbelievably small strike eliminate chemical weapons? Or bring the civil war to an end in Syria, or change anything at all in Syria? And to show you knuckleheads are not even on the same page, you'd then disagree with your own Secretary of State.
The United States military doesn't do pinpricks. Even a limited strike will send a message to Assad that no other nation can deliver.
And by the way, Mr. President, how can you guarantee your Tomahawk missile won't kill civilians and children? And don't give me that satellite laser thing. A 1,000-pound missile will bring down buildings and cause immense collateral damage well beyond your precise strike zone. But enter Big Bad Vlad doing the Putin pivot. The Russian president throws a lifeline to both Syria's Assad and to the president of the United States. Who knows that the American public and the international community is against him? Mr. President, Putin sees you as an easy mark, and he plays you like a fiddle. The president of the United States has been played, cornered. How? Putin is the one who's supplying arms to Assad. Putin is the one who thinks so little of us that he wouldn't even hand over someone you consider a traitor after 5 weeks of negotiations. Putin is the one offering the anti-missile defense system to stop our missiles from hurting Assad. Putin is the one who last week called your own Secretary of State an outright liar. But today, he's our ally, the savior upon whom you rely to save face. And as Putin rides high on his horse, he tries to sway the public in an op-ed piece that, other than his criticism of the United States exceptionalism, most Americans would agree with. I, for one, believe in American exceptionalism, and I hate kowtowing to Moscow, especially to a former KGB agent, for resolution to a problem that we should have been able to handle ourselves. Coincidentally, Putin asks what Americans are asking. Things you, Mr. President, can't answer. How is a strike against Syria in our national security interests? And why would the United States risk entering a civil war that will clearly spread far beyond Syria? And on this, Putin is credible. Russia is the patron of Syria as well as Iran. Russia has a vital interest in the region that Obama talked about attacking. The Obama administration drinks its own Kool-Aid, now says that Assad was really afraid of a military strike and that it was only the U.S. threat of force that prompted Assad to make these concessions. Really? Do you really think Assad is afraid of us? He reads the papers. He knew that Congress, the international community, the UN, the EU, NATO, and the Brits were all against a strike. And no surprise, the UN still hasn't issued its opinion on who issued and who used those chemical weapons in Syria. So why are we letting Putin be the intermediary, delivering messages from a guy who we say is in no position to set terms and who we don't believe, who we now want to believe, just to save face? And Mr. President, if you were serious, you would have gone forward with congressional permission to show strength in the event of what I think is the inevitable refusal by Syria to hand over all chemical weapons. Mr. President, admit it, you've been played, caught flat-footed by a devil who doesn't wear Prada. Through your feckless and inept foreign policy, you have squandered the goodwill and the reputation of this great nation. You engage in diplomacy through public conversations with your finger to the wind. The United States of America deserves better. The men who've made the monumental decisions that contributed to the greatness of America did it from a position of strength and respect. They didn't make these decisions on stage, but rather in the quiet of the Oval Office, after consultation and consideration of the consequences. You sit in the same office where Lincoln, FDR, and Reagan sat, but you are no Lincoln, no FDR, and you are no Reagan. To most of us, 2016 can't come soon enough.